out of everything that was moving, and everything was moving, it always is. The feed is designed to be always moving to produce the specific ambient, never quite satisfied quality of the person who is one more scroll away from the thing that will finally feel like enough. You stopped here. On this. On a title about love, which is either the thing you are closest to or the thing you are furthest from right now. And either way you stopped. I want to talk about the stopping, not the content of the scroll, not the algorithm or the platform or the sociology of the attention economy, all of which are real and have been examined at length by people with the credentials to examine them. The specific interior event of the stopping, the thing that happens in the person rather than in the feed when the continuous movement pauses at a particular thing. When something in the moving produces the specific involuntary before the decision recognition that makes the thumb slow and then stop. The recognition is not random. It is the interior responding to something that matches a frequency it was already carrying. Not the content matching an interest, the frequency matching a frequency. Something in what was moving contained a signal that your interior was already running, and the match produced the stop before the choice to stop had been consciously made. You are already carrying something about love. That is why you are here. I want to challenge something that I think is wrong about how most people think about love. Not wrong in the way that requires the dramatic revision of everything. Wrong in the specific, locatable, this one thing way that does not overturn the whole understanding, but changes the quality of everything built on it. The kind of wrongness that once seen cannot be unseen. That reorganizes the existing picture without replacing it. That makes the familiar thing legible in a different and more accurate way. The wrong thing is this. Love is not primarily a feeling. I know you know this. I know it is not a new observation. I know it has been said in approximately 10,000 variations across the breadth of the advice literature and the relationship content and the therapy speak that saturates the current cultural conversation about how people are supposed to be with each other. You have heard it. You have probably said it. You believe it as a proposition. And you are still, in the practical and lived sense, treating it primarily as a feeling. Not from hypocrisy, not from the failure to live up to the thing you believe, from the specific structural problem that knowing the true thing and living the true thing are not the same operation. The knowing is intellectual. The living is the body. The body has been in the feeling version of love for the entire duration of its experience, and the intellectual correction has not fully migrated into the body's operating system. The body still runs the old version, responds to the feeling as the primary signal, organizes the assessment of the relationship around the quality of the feeling, concludes from the fluctuation of the feeling that the relationship is fluctuating. The feeling fluctuates. The love, if it is real, does not fluctuate at the same rate as the feeling. This gap between the fluctuation of the feeling and the stability of the actual thing is where most relationships run into trouble. Not from the lack of love, from the misreading of the fluctuation as information about the love rather than as information about the feeling. Let me try to be more specific about what I mean, because the abstract version of this lands in the place where the general observations land and stays there. You have been in the feeling. You know what it is. The specific, unmistakable, everyone has their version of it quality of the early period, when the other person is new and the attention is organized around them and the neurological state is elevated in the way the early feeling elevates it. The conversation that runs faster than usual. The awareness of the other person's presence, even when they're not in the room. The specific texture of the days during that period, different from the ordinary days, more alive somehow, more saturated. That period does not last at that intensity. This you also know. The period settles. The specific, elevated, everyone is present at maximum quality of the early thing gives way to the sustainable thing. The thing that is possible to maintain indefinitely rather than the thing that burns at a rate that the system cannot sustain as the permanent state. And here is where the wrong thing does its most damage. Most people, when the settling begins, read the settling as the loss of something, as the diminishment, as the signal that the relationship has peaked and what remains is the management of the decline. The early feeling was the real thing. The settled feeling is the lesser version of the real thing. And so the person in the settling period begins consciously or not to do one of two things. They begin to try to recreate the early period, to produce the conditions that the early thing required, to chase the feeling that the early thing had, not from the dishonesty of the person who knows they are chasing. From the genuine belief that the feeling was the evidence of the love, and therefore the declining feeling is the declining love, and the declining love must be addressed, or they begin to withdraw. To conclude that the love was the feeling, and the feeling has gone, and what is left is the warm companionship of two people who have shared significant time, but whose love, in the proper sense, has run its course. Both of these responses are organized around the same wrong thing. The settling is not the loss of the love. The settling is the beginning of the love. I want to say something about what the love actually is, if it is not the feeling. Not in the philosophical sense. In the practical, how does it show up in a Tuesday sense? The sense that matters for the actual living of an actual shared life, rather than for the understanding of love as a concept. The love is the specific quality of attention that does not require the elevated state to be present. This is the thing. The early feeling produces the attention automatically. You do not choose to attend to the other person in the early period. The neurological state produces the attending. It is not an act of will, it is a consequence of the state. After the settling, the attending has to come from somewhere else. And where it comes from, when the relationship is the real thing rather than the close but not exact version. It's from the genuine, durable, settled interest in the specific person. The interest that is not produced by the elevated state because the elevated state is no longer producing it. The interest that exists independently of the state that is present in the ordinary conditions. That does not require the chemistry to be running at peak to generate the attending. That interest is love, not the feeling that preceded it. The interest that survives the settling. There is a second wrong thing related to the first, built on the same foundation. The second wrong thing is that love is found. The language of the finding is everywhere. Finding the one, finding your person, finding love. The finding implies the passive discovery of the pre-existing thing. The love is out there in a specific person, and the task is to locate the person who contains it. To move through the worlds until the location is identified and the finding occurs. This is wrong in the specific way that makes the searching exhausting and the not finding feel like personal failure. Love is not found. Love is built. Not instead of found. Not. In the replacement of the finding with the building as the correct metaphor. Both are true, and they are true in sequence. The finding is the beginning. The building is what the finding requires you to do with what you have found. And the building is the thing that most people are not told about, are not prepared for, are not even fully aware needs to happen. They find each other. They expect the finding to produce the thing. The finding has only produced the material. The thing has to be built from the material. The building is the love. I've been thinking about why the building metaphor is resisted, not consciously resisted, passively resisted, in the specific way of something that contradicts the received understanding and is therefore not quite integrated even when it is intellectually accepted. The building metaphor is less romantic than the finding metaphor. The finding has the specific quality of the fated thing, the rightness, the this was always going to happen quality of the discovery of the pre-existing. If the love was always there in a specific person waiting to be found, then the finding of it is the completion of something that was already written. The found love has the authority of the inevitable. The built love has no such authority. The built love is the contingent thing, the thing that might not have been built. That required the specific, daily, nobody is watching choices of two people who decide to keep building rather than to stop. That could have been not built at every point along the way. That exists not because it was written, but because it was chosen. Repeatedly, without the guarantee that the choosing would continue. The contingency is what makes the built love feel less secure. And the insecurity is what makes the finding metaphor preferable. If the love was found rather than built, then the love does not require the continuous choosing. Does not depend on the maintenance. Is not a risk from the stopping of the work. Cannot be unbuilt by the decision to stop building. Except it can. The found love that stops being built becomes something else. Becomes the artifact of what was found, the record of the discovery, the warm memory, the thing that used to be tended and is no longer being tended and is therefore no longer alive in the way that only the tended things stay alive. Love that is not built is not love in the present tense. It is love in the past tense dressed as the present. Here is something nobody tells you about the building. The building does not feel like the building while it is happening. It feels like the Tuesday. Like the ordinary, unremarkable, nobody is watching Tuesday of a shared life. The conversation about the thing that needs to be addressed. The sitting in the same room doing different things. The argument that arrives and requires the specific, real work of two people who are trying to understand each other rather than to win. The morning that is not the significant morning. The evening that is not the significant evening. The building is happening in all of it, not in the significant moments. In the ordinary ones. In the specific, accumulated daily investment of two people who are choosing the other person in the small ways that do not feel like choices because they are so ordinary. They have lost the awareness of being chosen. The choice is still happening. It is just invisible. The invisible choosing is the building. I want to tell you something about the people I have watched for long enough to understand what the building looks like at 15 years and 20 years and 30 years. Not the performing couples, not the people who maintained a presentation of the good relationship for the duration and whose relationship is underneath the presentation, the artifact I described, the actual ones. The ones whose love is present tense rather than past tense dressed as present. The thing I have noticed in all of them, without exception, in every genuine long love I have been close enough to observe, is the quality of the attention they still pay to each other. Not the romantic attention, not the elevated state attention of the early period, the other kind. The ordinary, daily, completely unperformed attention of two people who are genuinely interested in the person they have chosen, who have not withdrawn the interest into the general distribution after the early period settled, who have maintained, through the daily investment of the actual attending, the specific quality of the interest, that is the love. The interest is the love. The attending is the love. The choosing to keep attending is the love. That is all it is. And it is the most difficult thing. I want to say something about why it is difficult, the honest version of why. The attending is difficult because the familiar does not generate the attending automatically. The new thing generates the attending automatically. The new person, the new relationship, the new feeling. All of it produces the attention without the choice because the novelty is itself attention generating. The brain is organized to attend to the new. The new person in the early period has the full force of the novelty attention behind the attending. The familiar person has the opposite. The familiar person has been processed, has been filed in the understood category, the category that the brain does not need to continue attending to because it has already been organized. The continued attending to the familiar thing is not automatic, is not produced by the state. Is the deliberate chosen goes against the brain's preference decision to treat the familiar thing as the thing that deserves the same quality of attending that the new thing received automatically. The familiar person deserves more attending than the new person. They have more of the actual to receive. The attending reaches more of the real thing because the real thing has had the time to reveal itself. But the attending has to be chosen. That is the difficulty. There is a third wrong thing, the most personal one. The one that has cost the most in the specific lives I have been close to. The wrong thing is that love should be easy. I understand where this one comes from. It comes from the early period. The early period is easy in the specific sense that the elevated state does the work. The effort is invisible because the state is producing everything that the later settled relationship will require the person to produce through the actual choice. The conversation happens effortlessly. The attending happens effortlessly. The choosing happens effortlessly. The early period is the training wheels version. It is producing the behaviors that the relationship needs while hiding the fact that they are behaviors, making them feel like the natural consequence of the state rather than the things that will need to be actively maintained once the state has settled. Then the state settles. And the same behaviors that were effortless in the early period now require the effort. And the effort feels like the evidence that something is wrong. It is not the evidence that something is wrong. It is the evidence that you have arrived at the actual relationship, the one that requires the choosing, the one that requires the attending, the one that is not supported by the elevated state anymore and is now supported by something that you have to bring yourself. The bringing is the love. I've been changing the way I think about love for most of my adult life. Not steadily, not in the organized. I have decided to update the understanding way. In the specific, irregular, required by experience way. Each update was preceded by the experience that the existing understanding was insufficient for the situation I was in. The situation I was in kept outrunning the understanding I had brought to it. This is the only way I know of to change the understanding, not the intellectual version, not the reading of the correct description of love and the application of the description. The living of the experiences that description is trying to describe. The wrong turning that teaches you the right direction, not by showing you the right direction, but by showing you what the wrong one produces. What the wrong understanding produces is a specific, recurring, same mistake in different form disappointment of someone who is organized around the feeling and is therefore surprised each time when the feeling does not stay at its early intensity. Who keeps concluding that the settling is the signal of the wrong person. Who keeps looking for the feeling rather than building the interest. who keeps finding the material and not doing the building. I have done this. I am not speaking from the position of someone who has always known the right thing. I am speaking from the position of someone who has been wrong in the specific ways I am describing and who has, through the cost of the wrongness, arrived at something closer to the actual. The thing that changed the most for me was understanding the difference between the feeling of love and the practice of love. Not the distinction as the theory, as the living difference. The felt difference between the moment when the feeling is what is active and the moment when the practice is what is active. The feeling is passive. It happens to you. It arrives. It is present. It fluctuates. It settles. The feeling is not the thing you do. It is the thing that does you. The practice is active. It is the quality of attention you bring to the person when the feeling is not doing the attending for you. The asking of the question that demonstrates the genuine interest. The remembering of the middle of the sentence. The staying in the disagreement long enough to actually hear the other side. The coming closer when you sense the weight even without the signal. The just being near when the being near is what is needed, and the asking would only give the other person the chance to manage the response. The practice is the love in the present tense. The feeling is the love in the announcement. You are still scrolling, or you were still scrolling when the title produced the stop, and the stop produced the arriving here. And the arriving here has produced whatever this has produced in you. I do not know what it has produced. I know what I hope. I hope it has produced a specific, quiet, interior recognition of the thing that was already known, but not yet in the form that the body could use. The intellectual to body migration of the true thing. The beginning of the shift from the knowing of the right understanding to the living of it. Not because the living is simple, because it is the only version that produces the thing you stopped scrolling for. Not the feeling, the present tense love. The one that is built rather than found. The one that requires the attending. The one that is made from the ordinary Tuesdays. The one that is active rather than passive. The one that does not diminish with the settling because it was never the state, it was always the choice that is available right now. In whatever room you are in, with whoever you have chosen, the building is always available. Right now, just the attending, just the choosing, just the staying, that is all it ever was. Someone sent a message after the first part went out, not a long message. The long messages arrive too, and they have their own specific quality. The organized, I have been thinking about this quality of someone who has processed the thing and is now reporting the processing. This was not that. This was 3 sentences. Sent at an hour that suggested the sending was not planned. That the 3 sentences had arrived at the surface and been sent before the managing apparatus had the chance to organize them into something more considered. The 3 sentences said, I think I had been leaving every relationship the moment it started to require the choosing. I thought the requiring meant it had stopped being love. I did not know the requiring was where the love actually starts. I sat with that for a long time, not because it was surprising, because it was the most compressed version of the wrong thing I had been trying to describe. 3 sentences containing the entire arc of the misunderstanding. The belief, the behavior it produced, the cost of the behavior paid across enough relationships to finally identify the source. I wrote back one thing. I said the requiring is where the law actually starts. You had it exactly right, the requiring. I want to stay with this word because it is the word that the message used, and it is the right word. Not the obligation, not the duty, not the work in the sense of the labor that is performed against the preference. The requiring is different from all of those. The requiring is what the real thing asks of you. The feeling does not ask. It gives. It produces. It generates. The feeling is the period of the receiving. Everything arrives without the asking. The attending, the warmth, the interest, specific quality of the being chosen. It all arrives because the state is producing it. The feeling gives. Then the feeling settles, and the real thing asks. Asks for the attending now that the state is no longer producing it automatically. Asks for the interest to be chosen rather than generated. Asks for the staying when the staying is not supported by the elevated state and has to be supported by the actual choosing. The asking is not the signal that the love has diminished. It is the signal that the love has arrived at the level that requires the person rather than the state. The state was doing the work, now you do the work. And the you doing the work is the love in its full form. The form that is not dependent on the chemistry or the novelty or the specific neurological conditions of the early period. The form that exists because 2 people have decided it exists and continue to decide it exists through the specific daily nobody is watching decisions of the actually in it. What I want to say about the scrolling You are scrolling because the feed produces the specific, ambient, never quite satisfied quality as someone who is one more thing away from the thing that will finally feel sufficient. This is the design. The feed is not designed to satisfy. It is designed to produce the state that continues the scrolling. The satisfaction would end the scrolling, and the ending of the scrolling is not the objective. Love in the wrong understanding produces the same dynamic. The feeling produces the state that continues the seeking for the feeling, the seeking for the person who produces the feeling at the highest intensity. The next scroll. The one more thing. This one is not quite right, and maybe the next one will be exactly right. The feed and the wrong understanding of love are organized around the same mechanism. The mechanism of the not quite satisfied. The mechanism that keeps you moving, because the satisfaction is always just ahead. The right understanding of love is the opposite mechanism. It is the stopping. Not the stopping of the scrolling in the passive sense, the active stopping. It's the deliberate chosen, I'm going to be here now, stopping of the person who has understood that what they are looking for is not ahead, it is here. In the person they have already found. In the relationship that has already settled into the requiring, in the Tuesday that is not the significant Tuesday, but is the actual content of the person who sent the message, wrote again a few days later. One sentence this time. They said, I went back. I did not ask what that meant in the specific. I understood what it meant. They had left at the requiring. Had concluded that the requiring was the signal of the wrong thing. Had left in the direction of the next scroll. Had understood, in the space between the leaving and the reading of the first part, that the requiring was the signal of the right thing. Had gone back. Had chosen the building over the seeking. I do not know what happened after the going back. I do not know if the going back produced the thing they were hoping it would produce, or if too much had happened in the leaving to make the going back available in the form they needed. I do not know if the other person was still there or had moved in the direction their own life required. I know that going back was the right understanding finally lived. Not just known. Lived. That is the whole thing. Not the knowing of the right understanding of love, the living of it, in the Tuesday, in the requiring, in the choosing of the attending when the attending is not automatic, in the building that does not feel like the building while it is happening. That is the change in the way you think about love. Not the thought, the doing of the thing the thought requires. The stopping of the scroll, the going back, the staying, right here, right now, in what is already real, in what is already asking, in what is already love, just waiting for the choosing.